Hello and welcome everyone to the Love and Compassion podcast with Giselle. We believe that love and compassion have the power to heal our lives and our world. Today we have an amazing guest, Alexis Duncan, who is called the Destructress. I'm probably pronouncing that wrong. She offers thoughtful mentorship and psychic insight at crossroads moments for the secretly spiritual women. Super accomplished in many things from publishing and music to art and language, and steeped in herbal tea. Alexis is the witchy bestie you've always wanted. Please join me in welcoming Alexis. Hi, Alexis.
Hello, thank you for having me.
Hello. No, thank you for being on the show. Before we begin, can you tell me a little bit about what the Destructrix means?
Yes, so I was looking for a title that would really sit with me, that really kind of embodied what I do for my clients and my approach to things. And a lot of people use the word creatrix, and I just didn't, that's just not me. That implies only creative energy, and I'm not that. I destroy things. And part of that is just, the destructrix is a female destroyer, and that energy is really about letting go, destroying the things that no longer serve, removing that in order to transform and be reborn and embrace recreation. So
Yeah, yeah. Thank you for sharing this, and also thank you for explaining it. Because I think
I know
many
it's a
people are like,
little
what?
weird.
It's interesting. In my life, I've met people who had like that energy where they came sort of into your life, and it was a little bit of a tornado where things kind of got shooken up, and then they kind of left, and then you're like, what happened? But yeah, it's a really interesting energy, and it's such a helpful energy in the sense of sometimes maybe that's what we need because we're so not eager to let go of things, right? And
Yeah.
so can I ask how you got started into this sort of line of work, if you may?
Well, I was born psychic, and I'm the daughter of two ordained ministers. So that
Oh,
made
okay.
things tricky for me to kind of embrace who I was. And I didn't have a lot of resources and support to allow me to explore those things the way that might have benefited from at a younger age. I kind of had to figure it out on my own. And because I'm a Zennial, there really wasn't online communities and things to draw on at that time. It was really the Wild West in a lot of ways. And in some ways it still is.
Mm.
So I had to kind of figure it out for myself over time. And it wasn't until I was in my mid 30s that I was working on, I was writing an interfaith devotional and religions curriculum, and it caused me to be in this meditative state for days on end. And I had this powerful vision that was like, you can't ignore this anymore. You have to do this. Like, this is part of who you are, and this is how you have to be in the world. And so after that, it was really just a series of, okay, how do I figure these things out? What, excuse me, what am I called to do with them? How do I want to work with them? Figuring out how do I create spiritual boundaries for myself. And then as I started doing some of my intuitive coaching, I realized that a lot of my clients were people who were going through some of those things that I had been through. They didn't have the support that they needed. They didn't have the people in their lives that they felt safe discussing these things with. And so I was able to kind of shepherd them and guide them through that process.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. It must have been difficult or challenging. I don't want to use the word difficult, but challenging to navigate that as a child, like within the world of the realm of religion. I know
Yeah.
when I was younger, spirituality was seen in a specific way. Like
Yeah.
I had family members that kind of practice sort of like what people would consider aberrant arts, right? Like somebody that I knew used to have like a little skull in a little box that they used to talk to and had all these practices. And so that was really kind of the only side of it that we saw. It was either kind of um, evidence-based and research, or like very mind
Yeah.
focused, or this sort of occult. They
Hmm.
were sort of not in the middle, and so navigating that and trying to find your people must have been a little bit challenging or difficult, right?
Definitely. I mean, I think if you're connected with spirit, you will receive the guidance that you need when you need it in the
Mhm.
way that you need it.
Yeah.
But that doesn't take the challenging aspect out of it, does
Yes,
it?
yes. And yeah, and was it easy for you to listen to that guidance? Was it easy? Because I've been in situations as well that the guidance I received didn't make sense in my mind. And so I'm
Mm,
like, really? That's what we're doing? Why are we doing that? And so how
yeah.
easy or difficult was it for you to follow that guidance?
Well, at first you really have to figure out what the guidance is even telling you. And
Yeah.
especially when you're young, that's really difficult because you're feeling things for the first time and so you don't understand what the sensations in your body are telling you. And
Mhm.
so kind of connecting the intuitive information to the physical information is it's next to impossible. You make huge mistakes, which you would expect of like any average 12-year-old. As you get more in touch with your body though, and this is something that I talk about with my clients all the time, is it's really important to remember that the body is very essential to the spiritual journey and to life.
Yeah.
You really need to connect to your physical being. And so the more in touch you are with the physical sensations that are happening in your body and connecting that with the information that you're getting, the clearer and easier it's going to be to trust your intuitive nudges, to trust any kind of spiritual guidance that you get. So yeah, that I made a lot of mistakes when I was younger, but thankfully now, even when I get those really off the wall intuitive nudges that don't seem to connect to anything, I'm like, you know what? I'm just going to follow it. And then when I do, it's really fantastic. So,
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. Can you tell the audience a little bit about how the body, like the role the body plays in spirituality? Because obviously the body plays an important role in health, right? In us staying alive in this.
yeah,
But
absolutely.
but people might not always understand how it fits with spirituality, because I think sometimes people have been taught to bypass. Like, let's
Mm,
bypass the body, let's
yeah.
bypass those feelings, like bypass. We just like we want to get above this material 3D world. How do the two interplay?
Well, I would say that everything that's physical has a spiritual signature, and everything that's spiritual has a physical signature. Our physical bodies are a reflection of our spirit, and that's clear, right? Form follows function. When you use something a certain way, it develops and is shaped a certain way. And the same is true with the body. If a swimmer's body changes when they practice swimming,
Mm.
a cellist's body changes when they practice cello. It's the same thing. And so as we go through life, and you can see this when you look at someone who's in their 80th or 90th year, you see how their body has been shaped over time and how it's
Yeah.
been used over time. But there's actually been studies that show that the body sends more messages to the brain than the brain sends to the body.
Mm.
So how we interact with the world, the body is this first line of defense and this first line of inquiry and this first line of experience. And how our body looks, you know how people perceive us also shapes our physical experience. And all of these things shape our spiritual experience. What makes sense to you, what feels good to you, is going to be different depending on how your body is shaped. Like, for example, I have hypermobile Ehlers-Danlos. Okay, this is a connective tissue issue, right? So I can't do yoga. Yoga actually will cause me to have injury. So I'm not going to be practicing different asanas as part of my spiritual practice. But for somebody who doesn't have these connective tissue issues, yoga could be a really wonderful and powerful ally and practice for them to experience all kinds of spiritual things. So it really just depends on, how your body is, and the more in touch you are with it, the more marvelous it can be. I mean, how wonderful is it to experience your skin? How wonderful is it to experience the smell of fresh bread baking? These can be spiritual experiences, and these can really ground us in the present moment. And you can't have that if you don't have a body. So enjoy what the body offers.
Yeah. And I think that's what more and more that I'm really becoming aware of, just how joyful and precious and beautiful every single day each experience can be. Like, we're so future focused, or sometimes we're so past focused that, we think, once I do this, I'm going to be happy. Once I do this, and it will constantly trying to reach a goal that seems always to be moving. But there's joy in the moment. There's joy in experience and a cup of coffee and just watching kids play, and all of those moments. You're right. We can't do without a body. We can't do without. So instead of making sometimes the body our enemy, can we make it our friend or our best friend, and it's helping us really experience and get the most juice out of life, if you may.
Yeah,
Right?
absolutely. I
Yeah.
mean, I would say that that's one of why else are we here if we aren't here to experience this physical life? Whatever you believe about what happens after after or before, the body is unique. Spirit is one thing, but the body is unique, and the body is special. And this experience right now is special. And so it's worth taking the time to embrace what is about that. And I would say, and this might be a little unconventional, but I would say even in the difficult things, to find a kind of joy and beauty in even those difficult things as part of this physical experience.
Yeah. 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 And you've had some challenges, obviously. I think
Yeah.
before we had talked about your experiences with COVID. So 2020, do you
Yeah.
want to share a little bit about that and what sort of helped you through?
Yeah. So I got long COVID in March of 2020, which was like the first wave of the pandemic. And so nobody knew what was going on. There weren't tests for it. There was a lot of confusion. I ended up being isolated from my family for 11 weeks because they just didn't know what to do. And at the time, I was still breastfeeding my youngest child. And so they would bring her to me just to like nurse, and then she would have to be kept out. And so, it was a really painful, awful thing for all of us because, my husband was like, is my wife going to is she going to be okay? Is she going to live? Is she going to be normal ever? And then my kids were traumatized. So both of them ended up having to be in therapy because it was like, what's going on with mom? This person that's supposed to be this rock for you is just not there. And we can see her, but we can't interact with her. And then even after my isolation, excuse me, it took a long time for me to get back to where I am now, which is like, I mean, it was a hard road. And just like with acute COVID, there were cycles of symptoms. And so I would have extreme fatigue, or then I would have like chronic migraines, or then I would have, vision problems or neurological problems or GI problems. And it was just like, what, what
Yeah.
do I do? Which
Yeah.
specialist will I go to now who won't be able to help me?
Yeah. Yeah. It must have been,
And so,
yeah, it must
yeah,
have been
so it was
scary.
rough.
Yeah, it must have been really, really scary. What do you think helped you through the process in being able to get through that piece? Like what were some of the pillars that really helped you get through that time? Because like you said, there was no answers at that
No,
time. Nobody knew anything. I mean, everything
no.
was changing moment by moment. What helped you kind of hold on and helped you get through the other side?
So I I've always been this kind of person. I've always been an active person, and I have always told myself, well, this is temporary. And then
It's
I've
true.
always been
Everything
like,
is temporary. Yeah.
everything is temporary. So I could trust that everything was going to be temporary. And I could always find some thing that I could do or focus on. So, especially during that isolation, this was the hardest time. What I would do is I would practice grounding, where I would like think of, like, I would look around even in my room or out the window, and I'd be like, what's something that I can appreciate about right now? What's one thing? And I would look out and I'd be like, oh, the sky is blue. It's beautiful today. Or I would listen to the birds and I would think about the birds. Or I would, enjoy my blanket and the sensation of my blanket. There were such small things because that's all I could do. And then I was having cognitive issues as well. And so I was like, okay, what's something that I can do that can keep my brain where I want it to be? And so I got Duolingo on my phone, and
Nice.
I was like, what's the hardest language that I can think of to like practice? I was like, Korean, we'll do that. And so I was like, even if I just did like one lesson a day, I was just like, okay, I'm just going to do one little thing. And then I also focused on, what really mattered to me. I noticed that when I was the sickest, my values, like what was most important to me, my priorities shifted. And because I really didn't know what was going to happen to me. And I was like, if I die, how do I feel about how I've lived my life? And as far as like a bucket list, I was like, I've done everything that I really wanted to do. As like the experiences that I've had, I feel good about. I don't really have any regrets. The only thing that was really important to me was time with my family, with people that I was really close to. And so when I did have time with them, I was really deeply present with that. And I just made a really big effort to just enjoy being with them and telling them the things that they needed, that I wanted them to hear from me. And to this day, that has changed. Whenever I have a moment where either of my kids is near me, I'll just give them a hug and I'll whisper in their ear and I'll say, I love you. I'm proud of you. You bring me joy every day. And I really mean it. Like, I put a lot of meaning behind those words and I let them just sit with them, because you don't know what's going to happen. I mean, even a healthy person could walk outside and get struck by a car and be gone. And so making the time to do those things, it it's really important.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you for sharing your story. You said so many powerful things. Do you think that this experience helped you get to a point you might not have gotten if you hadn't gotten It's
Absolutely.
so
Uh,
sick.
yeah. I would, I had to rebuild my entire life.
That's why you're the
So,
disciple now.
I mean, I really did. I ended up rebuilding my health, obviously. My approach to my body is completely different. I'm much more in tune with my body, and I know exactly what it needs, when it needs, because I've had to pay such close attention for so long. I rebuilt my marriage because I ended up during this time, I ended up being on the brink of divorce because it was just so wearing and there was so much happening. So the way that I communicate with my husband and the way that we treat each other, the kinds of things we do together totally changed. I had to rebuild my parenting because my children were traumatized and had these horrible experiences. So I ended up having to advocate for them in really big ways to find them the supports that they needed. And honestly, the way that we are as a family is just so much better. I, you know, we don't have the kinds of issues that even some typical families might have because we have structures in place. My kids have coping mechanisms. They're able to regulate themselves. They help each other regulate. I mean, it's a really beautiful thing. And in some, it seems backwards, but in many ways, I'm actually grateful for the experience of this. I wouldn't wish it on anyone.
Fair. Yeah,
Absolutely not.
absolutely. There's different ways to
However,
learn. Yeah.
yeah. However, because it happened to me, I was able to take it and use it to transform all these different parts of my life. And I'm grateful for where I am now.
Yeah. And so well said, because I think one of the things that we must acknowledge what is your willingness to alchemize a situation that was so, so difficult and, like sort of mindful gold from it, right? The fact that you were even willing to do the little things such as, okay, what am I grateful for? I'm breathing. There's the sky, the soft pillow. Being willing to do that work of because it's so much easier sometimes to just really swallow in the pit of despair of our victimization, but to be able to look at things to be grateful for in even the most challenging of circumstances, I think it's something to acknowledge. So I think that from that perspective, I think your being able to shift your mindset really helped you get to the point where you can say, I'm grateful for that experience. Like I said, I wouldn't wish it on anyone
Yeah.
else, but I'm really
No.
grateful. I'm
And
grateful for
and
sure.
I want to not be disingenuous in some way because I want to be clear. I did have times that were really low, like there were times where I wasn't able to do that as well. Or I was having one of the symptoms that I've had with my migraines was actually mood altering stuff, and it was difficult. And so there were times that where the only thing I could do was tell someone I'm having this moment and I'm not able to like walk through it well, like I need your support. And and that was all that that was the only thing that I could do. And fortunately, because of who I am, I had those supports and I did feel comfortable reaching out to people. But I do like, if someone is listening to this or watching this, I do want you to know that like it's normal to have those really low moments, and just to be okay with that. Like that's a
Yeah,
normal part of
that's
the
totally fair.
experience.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And
Absolutely.
just reach out to people when you don't feel like you can do it on your own, because there are people who will support you.
Yeah. Yeah. And I just want to stress because I think what you're saying is so spot on, and it really goes to my questions on compassion, which is like be compassionate to yourself. I know in my spiritual journey, I've had instances like of like when you feel bliss and you feel grateful and you feel, and then there's other times when you just can't find it. You can't find the compassion. You can't find the love for yourself. You really can't find it. And like you just got to admit, okay, I can't find it today. I just really can't. Maybe tomorrow, right?
Yeah.
Maybe in the next moment, but right now I don't have it.
Yeah.
And that's okay.
Yeah.
How has compassion or self-compassion in particular really helped you when navigating kind of your most difficult moments?
I mean, I would definitely say that there would be times where it's like, I can't do what I used to do before. Like, that's not possible right now. And I would sit with that, I'd sit with the frustration, the despair, and the discouragement, and I'd be like, okay, that's okay that I had that feeling, and it's understandable. And now, like, what can I do? What do I need to do for myself? How do I need to be for myself now, who I am now? And one of the most powerful practices that I learned over this time, that I think most of us in the modern world could use this lesson, is to rest and to take breaks and to pace yourself. You don't always have to be productive, and your value is not from being productive. You don't have to achieve something to be worthy to be here. Just being is enough. And especially at the beginning of my illness, it was really hard for me because I do things. I am a recovering overachiever. So like, sitting still and not being able to do things was like, what is happening right now? How can I contribute to the world? What am I? But over time, I realized, everything in nature has cycles, and we are creatures of nature, and we have cycles too. And one of those is dormancy, one of those is rest. And it's good and safe to rest.
Yeah. Yeah. You said so much there. I think, we have such a culture of hustle and grind. And, like that's one of my things for 2024. Let's be done with that already. Like, because I think if we're gonna work hard, we gotta rest just as hard. And we just kind of we like, especially for me and in my culture and in my family, we always had this perspective of push through, just push through, push through.
Mm,
But then you get to the point where you just can't push through anymore, right? Like, all the stuff you've been pushing through just comes at you. And it's sort of like really focusing on being, not the doing, but just the being.
yeah.
But we have a hard time identifying with just being, right? Like, think about how we introduce ourselves. I'm a so and so, and I do this and I do that and I do the other. It's not about, I'm just a human being trying my best, working on myself, right?
Yeah.
um but the resting component is so, so important. And I find that if you don't rest, your body will find ways to find rest for you.
Hmm.
But yeah, I can't believe how much our identity is related to or connected to how much we do. One of the hardest, most challenging things I had to say to myself was really, can I still love and accept myself even if I accomplish nothing in this world? Like, even if I don't accomplish all the things, quote unquote, that I think I'm supposed to do, like, can I still just accept myself and just be? Why do you think that being has for so long been regarded as something that is just not the way, and is it changing from your perspective?
Well, I think that it it stems from internalized capitalism.
Yeah.
We're told, I mean, basically since the Industrial Revolution, people have just been we're just working, 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 and there's no seasons to it. We removed, once we got out of agriculture, we removed the seasons. If you go to a farming community, people take breaks because you have to. That's just how the natural world works. But if you're in a city or you're in, some kind of industry that is technological, there are no breaks. There's no reason to have a break because a machine just goes. But I think especially with current generations, there's a recognition that we're not machines. We can't function that way, and we should not function that way. We deserve to have breaks. We deserve to have, our work end at the end of the workday. We deserve to have time with our friends. We deserve to have a life that's not work. And I mean, you can see it kind of with the ways in which unions have gotten more popular and more powerful again, which is wonderful. It's wonderful. I think it's wonderful that people are recognizing that we don't have to produce, that we can just be, and that it's enough. So many mental health issues stem from this problem, this idea that you're not worthy if you're not producing, and you have to be, going. And if we could just kind of deal with this idea of internalized capitalism and let go of these ideas of like produce, achieve, and rest, I think it would just be so much better, not only for us as human beings, but for our planet in so many ways.
Agreed. I love what you said about the seasons, because I think, so much of our life, we've moved so far away from flow and from connecting to nature and from our own inner nature, that it's so artificial, right? It's this that we can go 24/7 and that we're machines and we're not in that beingness. And so what do you think really helps you when you are in those moments where you get caught in the whole, rat race and the whole I should be doing this and should be doing that? What helps you come back to yourself?
I usually notice, so I do make lists for myself. Okay. I'm a list person. I like to have structure that helps me focus and helps me, make sure I get things done that I do need to get done or want to get done. But I notice sometimes I'll want to do more. And then I'll be like, nope. That's my trick, is if I want to do more, I got the things done already, I want to do more, I'll be like, no, I'm going to stop now. And that keeps me from getting burnt out, because it allows me to pace, spread out my energy, and then I can do some fun things as opposed to just doing the work stuff. I mean, obviously there are times where you have to do a little bit more because of obligations or whatever. But for the most part, if I have the space to do that, and I do work really hard at cultivating that space, I will take it. I also pay attention to my body a lot. I mean, I really try and pay attention, like, okay, how does my body feel right now? How do my joints feel? Have I been sitting too long? How do my eyes feel? Am I tired? Do I need to, drink some water? Whatever the case may be. And then I'm just like, I'm just gonna, even if I didn't get everything done on my list, I'll be like, nope, my body says no. So I'm gonna follow that.
Awesome. Because we don't often listen to our bodies, right? Again, it's that push through culture that I could just do this and then the body finds a way. So I think it's beautiful that you are listening to your body as, as a way to kind of stay connected to yourself. What are the other things that you do in order to honor your body for yourself?
I have rituals of self-care.
Okay.
I have and I say rituals, I mean, like, I'm not like, I'm not doing sage or something necessarily, but but like I
Not
have
that there's
like,
anything wrong with
there's
that.
nothing wrong with that, but that's just not me. You know, that's not what I
Yeah.
do.
Yeah.
So like I have like a skincare routine, you know, in the morning and evening. I give myself a facial massage when I put my lotions into my skin. I try and take a bath at least once a week, and I will either I will scrub my skin off or I will like soak in Epsom salts or something like that and you know do a face mask, deep condition my hair. I mean like the whole thing, and it really is like a ritual. And then you know I'll my hair care routine, my skincare routine. I mean, it's involved, and I recognize that it's involved. It's not for everybody, but it's definitely it's a grounding practice, and it's a ritualizing practice that communicates very deeply that my body's important,
Mm.
that
Mm-hmm.
that my body is important, and that how I feel in my body is important. I've worked really hard at wearing clothing that feels good to me,
Mm-hmm.
you know, that makes me feel sexy, that makes me feel pretty, that makes me feel comfortable and good in my body. You know, I think about what foods I eat, and I don't mean this in like a not in like a diet aesthetic way, but in a like, how does this make my body feel when I eat it? Does this feel good to me, or does it feel ugh? I mean, yes, like sometimes I want to have cake, and I'm gonna
Yeah.
let
Some of
myself
those
have cake.
cookies, they feel good.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
also like if I had cake all day, I would make myself feel sick. So
Yeah.
like I have like, you know, if I'm going to have something like that, I have it once a day because that's what feels good to me. You know, and then like I'm like, okay, I wake up in the morning and I don't just automatically have a certain breakfast. I think about it. You know, I stop and I think and I'm like, what would feel good to me this morning to eat? And then you know like I have like a kind of things to choose from, and then like I'm like, okay, this is the thing I want to have for breakfast this morning. You know, it's those little things, and I've just made it a habit to really honor my physical form. And you know like I dance for exercise. I love dancing, and I do it because it's fun for me. It feels good to my body. It feels like a celebration of life. And it's enjoyable when I get the movements, you know, better.
Yeah. Definitely.
And so, yeah, but like there's a couple of keys there, you know. The key is like it needs to feel good for me, and it needs to work with like my overall life. And so, you know, this stuff that I do isn't necessarily going to work for everyone, and that's okay. You know,
Yeah.
it shouldn't.
Yeah.
They're not me. So,
Yeah, yeah, definitely.
but
Well, I can
yeah.
definitely relate to some of the stuff you were saying. I love skincare. I love the process. I love, especially since I discovered for me Korean skincare. Like that's one of my, it's so much fun. I know,
Oh,
I
good.
love it. And like K-beauty, and there's so many amazing things on TikTok that I'm learning about like my skin and how to improve.
Mhm.
And it's just so fun. Like I
It's
think about
fun.
it it's just fun. It's just, like I can love and accept myself as I am and choose to change. Like it doesn't have to be over, right? And so I have fun with it. And so, but one of the things you said to me just now really made me think, you know what? Because, it's funny how you apply things in one part of the life, but not another. I'm such a creature of habit when it comes to breakfast. Like I'm just like, I just gotta have my oatmeal and gonna have it. And then I thought, oh, you know what? What would it be like to every day just decide, I'm gonna have what do I feel? What does my body feel like today? What does it feel like? I do that in other areas of my life, including what I'm gonna do for the day. Like, what's what the source spirit, my higher self want me to do in
Mhm.
terms of how do I serve today, like all of that stuff. But not in terms of like having fun with breakfast and some of the more habitual things that I noticed. But the less we are in habits, the more open we are to experiences and the more joy we can get out. So thank you for that. I appreciate that. I'm going to try that tomorrow and see what I hope hear
I
meal
will tell
again.
you, I did that
Like,
today. I had, I made myself, this was something I did for the first time. I made berry and cream cheese stuffed French toast for breakfast this morning.
ooh,
It
that,
wasn't as hard as it sounds. Just go on
that
Pinterest if
sounds
you really,
really cool.
but but I had
Yeah,
been, I was like, I would really like, and I was not super energetic this morning, but I was like, nope,
yeah,
I'm gonna do it. And I did it, and it was like, oh, this is delightful. This is right. So
yeah.
yes, I definitely encourage you to explore that.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. So thank you for that. One of the other things that I found with COVID, well, was it just got us out of our usual habits. Like we couldn't go to the same workplaces, we couldn't do the same things. We had to completely shift. And so, from my perspective, it was something that needed to happen in terms of
Yeah.
like our consciousness. I was wondering, is there anything you're seeing for 2024? How our maybe consciousness may be changing or what people should be considering or doing? Anything in terms of 2024?
I mean, so I did this practice. This will be a little story and it will
Yeah,
expand.
yeah. I love
Um,
stories.
so I did this practice called Omen Days, which it's a Celtic practice that the 12 days of Christmastide or Yuletide, each day you look for signs, and each of the 12 days corresponds to a month of the year.
Oh, that's
And
cool.
it's kind of fun, and it's kind of, I've never done it before. A few people that I knew were doing it. I was like, and I'm just gonna do it, see what comes up.
Yeah.
And I noticed a couple of things that came up, and this was a sign to me that I should do that I should have like a kind of ritual bath and kind of shifting into the next month and the next focus. And I think that I think that's one thing that I think is a good idea. Now, it doesn't have to be a bath for you, but
Mm.
but thinking about honoring the transition and making it sacred to us to some degree. I think bringing sacredness back into our regular life, daily life, is a really powerful thing because it helps
Mhm.
ground you, it helps bring you into the present moment, and it helps you recognize the beauty and the divinity in the everyday. Another thing that I noticed, or another sign that kind of came up for me, was this urge to embrace your zone of genius
Mm.
and to do the things that you recommend to other people. I think a lot of times we don't honor those things for ourselves. We downplay the things that we're really good at and our own power. And so I was urged to do that in a big way for myself. And I think that that's something that's really powerful for everyone. And I think that, yeah, really honoring your own power and stepping
I love
into
it.
it and
Mhm.
embracing it, that would be a beautiful thing. And I think it would be really great if more people did it. So I hope that anyone that's watching, listening to this will do that. I would love
Yeah.
for that to be
Oh,
true.
well, that's it's so beautiful. Thank you for that. I definitely think that 2024, like feel like feel like there's been such a shift in consciousness, like
Mm,
that I think we're starting to really understand how much we've given away our power to other people and other
mm,
things.
mm,
So what you're saying really resonates with me because I think that's the sense that I'm getting, that it really is about people stepping up into our own power. And that's why you're seeing all of these systems are being rocked and it's just not
mhm,
working anymore. And so we're trying to figure out, okay, so if not that, then what? And so for me, it really is about understanding the role that love and compassion play, because this is just what resonates with me. Doesn't have to resonate with others. It's just the role, the importance of that as the foundation of what we may be wanting to build moving forward. But I definitely see changes that I hadn't seen before. Even my kids comment on the fact that they've seen some changes over
Mhm.
time
Yeah.
in terms of how people are, the things that are coming up, and it's sometimes even in extremes, like extremes in behavior in the positive or extremes in behavior in the negative. But everything seems to be coming up to for the light to be shown on.
Hmm.
Shown is right.
Yeah.
Right? But sometimes we don't like what we're seeing. And so it's an interesting time. Doesn't it? Interesting time to be alive. You're like, this is
It is an
interesting.
interesting time.
Right? Because you're like, what is times when I think to myself, sometimes the things we worship, prioritize, like this world is so topsy-turvy. Does it not sometimes feel like this world is a little bit like the upside down? Like the
Yeah.
things we prioritize, the things we care about, the things we like when I go deep into myself and spirituality, like in terms of like in my heart, like when I really go inward, like the things that I think generate real love in me are like soul and experiences in the present moment and just like little tiny things that are so that made me feel so abundant and make me feel so thankful to be alive.
Hmm.
And then I'm like, why am I not taking note of that in my everyday? Like, why do I allow all of these other things to take my energy and attention
Yeah.
when they're not as important? Or maybe they are. I mean, they are important because I mean, we're living this experience, but I guess just like, I think just sometimes the things we value don't make any sense to me anymore.
It's true. I mean, it's true. And I think that goes back to that internalized capitalism. I mean, it's just like the values are just totally backwards
Yeah. Yeah.
because yeah, we're social creatures. We need to do
Yeah.
social things. We need to be with our people and yeah, and relishing those experiences that we can make. And I think when we get in touch with ourselves, when we honor our power and we bring sacredness into our life, then we start to see that shift even more. And I think you're right. I think more people are, embracing these things. And sometimes I mean, it starts with the little ones, but it just builds and it compounds, and it's really lovely to see.
Yeah. Yeah. You know, one of the things that you mentioned is that internalized capitalism. And I try to think of systems in terms of like how I contributed to those systems and how sometimes those systems reflect how I acted when I was hurtful. And do we not buy into the whole capitalist thing, hook, line, and sinker? At least I did. Like, I think when I think back of what these systems we have created and how we've contributed to them, I'm like, it's sort of like
Yeah.
the terminology that we no longer use that we used to use. We're like, remember we used to say that? That's so inappropriate and hurtful. What were we thinking?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's but hindsight is always 2020, right?
Yeah, totally.
Mhm. Incredible. Yeah. Strange times. I was wondering if you could tell people a little bit about what you're working on, where they can find you. I know you have potentially a special offer for these listeners, so I don't know if you want to
Yes.
share that with people.
Yes. You can find me on alexisdonkin.com. I'm also on Instagram and TikTok a lot. I love DMs, so feel free to reach out and message me. I'm happy to chat with you about all the things. And you can, I did like I do think that one of the best ways to work with me is to just do an ask a psychic session. And the reason is that it's basically a conversation like we're having.
Yeah.
And it's just like one question, really. It's like 20
Mm.
minutes. It's only $30. And if you mention this podcast, we'll also get a chat day later. And that can be helpful because sometimes the things that come up during a conversation, maybe things develop over time. And so then you can chat with me and be like, hey, this thing came up. Like, what do
Yeah.
you think? But regardless, when you leave the conversation, you will definitely have a clear next right step. You'll feel affirmed. You'll have assurances about your trajectory of where you're going. And it just feels good. So I'd love for you to take me up on that. That would be super great. And remember to reference this awesome podcast because Giselle is fabulous. And this conversation was so fun.
Thank
Um,
you. Thank you. Yeah.
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 So,
Oh, I do have one more question, which is, what is your definition of unconditional love? I'm asking all my guests regarding
yes.
what their perspective of love or unconditional love. Some people don't define it as unconditional, but
Well, it's love. I would say that unconditional love is love despite. It doesn't matter, right? It's love for all of the whole package. Conditioned love, you love because.
yeah.
But
Wow.
but love
I love that.
despite is so
Mhm.
much more powerful.
Yeah. I love that you said that because you're right. It's the because versus despite. Yeah. Oh, what a beautiful way to end the podcast. And thank you everyone who tuned in to our podcast today. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more amazing content and join us another time for the Love and Compassion podcast with Giselle. See you soon.
Bye.